Commission. Today's meeting is live cablecast on SF.gov TV and live streamed online at sfgovtv.org/ethicslive. For public comment, members of the public may attend in person or may participate by phone or on the WebEx platform as explained in our agenda document. Clerk, can you please explain how remote public comment will be handled?
Certainly. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each member of the public is allowed 3 minutes to speak. For those attending in person, opportunities to speak during the public comment period will be made available here in room 400 at City Hall. For those attending remotely, the public comment period can also be provided via phone call by calling 1-415-655-0001, access code 2664-587-1714, followed by pound, and then press pound again to join as an attendee. When your item of interest comes up, press *3 to raise your hand to be added to the public comment line. Public comment is also available via the WebEx client application. Use the WebEx link on the agenda to connect and press the raise hand button to be added to the public comment line. For detailed instructions about how to interact with the telephone system or WebEx client, please refer to the public comment section of the agenda document for this meeting. Public comment may also be submitted in writing and will be shared with the Commission after the meeting has concluded and will be included as part of the official meeting file. Written comments should be sent to ethics.commission@sfgov.org. Members of the public who attend the Commission meetings, including remote attendants, are expected to behave responsibly and respectfully. During public comment, please address your comments to the Commission as a whole and not to an individual member. People who engage in name-calling, shouting, interruptions, foul language, or other distracting behavior may be excluded from participation.
Thank you, Clerk. I now call the meeting to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll under item 1?
Yes. Commissioner Ye?
Present.
Commissioner Francois? Present. And Commissioner Flores-Fang?
Present.
With 3 members present, you have a quorum.
With that, I call agenda item 2, general public comment. Is there anyone in the room who would like to offer general public comment? Okay, Clerk, please proceed with any remote public comment.
Chair Flores-Fang, we're checking the queue to see if there's any remote comment.
Thank you.
And Chair Flores-Fang, there are no callers in the queue.
Thank you. Hearing no further members of the public wishing to speak, general public comment under item 2 is now closed. I now call the consent calendar. Colleagues, as noted on the agenda, there will be no separate discussion on a consent calendar item unless a request is made by a commission member or a member of the public in attendance, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent calendar and considered as a separate item. Does any commissioner wish to discuss any item on the consent calendar? The only comment I have is that I just want to acknowledge and thank for their service both Taylor and Kyle, who are no longer working with us. So wishing them the best in whatever they end up doing. Anyone in the public? Nope. Can you check the queue, please?
Chair Flores-Fang, checking the queue to see if there's any remote callers.
Thank you.
And there are no callers in the queue.
Thank you, Clerk. Public comment on the consent calendar is now closed. Commissioners, hearing no further discussion, do I hear a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved.
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. On the motion to adopt the consent calendar, Commissioner Ye?
Aye.
Commissioner Francois? Aye. And Chair Flores-Fang?
Aye.
And Chair, with 3 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes.
Great. I now call agenda item 6, discussion and possible action regarding behested payment waiver legislation. I'd like to request that the Policy and Legislative Affairs Manager, Michael Canning, introduce the item, and I understand that he's also going to split his time with someone from Supervisor Mandelman's office. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. This item regards an ordinance that would amend the city's behested payment rules. This ordinance was introduced by President Mandelman, and as mentioned, a representative from his office is also here to present on this item. I'll first give a little background and a brief overview. Since 2022, the city has prohibited officers and designated employees from soliciting payments from interested parties, known as behested payments. This rule has a waiver provision that allows the Board of Supervisors to, by resolution, waive the rules for departments that request such waivers. These waiver resolutions are required to summarize the purpose of the solicitation or solicitations to be made, identify the interested parties or types of interested parties, if they're known, who would be solicited, state why the department believes the parties are interested parties, and issue a finding that the waiver would not create an appearance of impropriety and would be in the public interest. These waivers apply for 6 months into the future. They cannot apply retroactively and are required to be publicly posted to Data SF by the clerk of the board within 30 days of approval. And there's a provision that specifies the Board of Supervisors is prohibited from issuing waivers for itself. The legislation introduced by President Mandelman would change that last provision so that the board could grant waivers for officers and employees within the Board of Supervisors. Staff does not believe this change would severely undermine the overall rule, since the waiver requirements that the Commission advocated for in the past would remain in place, and waivers would still be granted if a majority of supervisors agreed to the waiver and took that action in public to approve it. The public nature of these waivers and the required agreement among members of the Board of Supervisors serves as a bit of a check against anything that could lead to the appearance of impropriety or impropriety itself. This ordinance would also require that the position of the city employee or officer to whom the waiver would apply would also be included in the resolution, providing further clarity around who is and who is not able to make solicitations under a waiver. And additionally, Ethics Commission staff have included an additional amendment to correct the name of the chapter. Chapter 6 is still titled Behested Payment Reporting, which makes reference to a previous reporting requirement that no longer exists in the chapter, so the amendment would make it just Behested Payments. And lastly, there was one amendment from President Mandelman's office proposed yesterday that's not reflected in the current draft. That would be on line 24 of page 1. It would specify where it currently says identify the city employees and officers. It would clarify identify the positions of the city employees and officers, clarifying that identifying the position is sufficient and that individual names don't need to be included in the resolution. Staff don't have any sufficient or significant concerns with that amendment. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions. And as mentioned, Melody Mathewson from President Mandelman's office is here to present as well.
Sorry, quick question. Can you just repeat which change you just mentioned?
The one not reflected would be the bottom of page 1. Proposed resolution that seeks a waiver shall identify the city employees and officers. In between identify and the city would be added the positions of. A proposed resolution that seeks a waiver shall identify the positions of the city employees and officers to whom the waiver will apply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Michael. You gave a lot of background that I probably don't need to give, so I apologize if you've already heard some of this. Good morning. My name is Melanie Mathewson. I'm here today on behalf of President Mandelman, who is the sponsor of the legislation before you. President Mandelman is a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and for months saw firsthand what we all now know to be true. This year has been one of the toughest budget cycles the city has faced in decades. San Francisco is confronting a severe structural deficit, rising costs, pressure from both lower than expected revenues, and unfortunately threats to federal funding. In times like these, he feels we can't afford to leave any effective tool unused. With that in mind, President Mandelman introduced this ordinance that would extend to the Board of Supervisors the same behested payment waiver authority already afforded to departments, the mayor, and other elected officials. Like Michael said, as you know, in 2022, voters adopted Proposition E, which prohibits elected officials, department heads, commissioners, and designated employees from soliciting donations from parties with interest in city decisions unless a behested payment waiver has been obtained. And the Board of Supervisors finds that the waiver would serve in the public interest. In the years since, the last 3 years, the board has granted waivers for the purchase of fire trucks, expanding shelter beds, funding immigrant legal services, responding to the fentanyl crisis, and more. But for reasons that remain unclear, Proposition E explicitly disallows members of the Board of Supervisors from seeking or obtaining such waivers. Supervisors are often closest to their constituents. We hear directly from neighbors and community-based groups and are uniquely excluded from participation, regardless of the merit or the cause of the public benefit. Thankfully, this gap can be closed. The ordinance before you would permit individual supervisors to request waivers under the same public interest standards that applies to other elected officials. As Michael said, like all proposed waivers, any resolution would identify the prospective donors when they're known, the title of the public employee, describe the purpose of the solicitation, and explain the public interest served. Like any behested waiver, it would be brought forward by a supervisor, go through the public legislative process, and would be held to the same transparency, accountability, and oversight standards. We believe that doing this in a moment of budget strain is not only prudent, but it is essential. In months ahead, we know that there's even tougher decisions that are going to be made. We have grant contracts shrinking, nonprofit partners that are telling us they're under strain every single day. Local priorities are competing for diminishing federal resources, and we feel we must equip policymakers with every lever able to respond to emerging needs. President Mandelman has long believed in expanding responsible participatory tools, and this moment simply reminds us how urgent that is. On behalf of myself and President Mandelman, I want to thank Director Ford, Michael Canning, Deputy City Attorney Brad Rusi, and Kathleen Rades for their work on this legislation. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thanks.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I do have quite a few questions.
Yeah.
My questions are in 3 different buckets, and I can also, and I think my fellow commissioners also have questions. So the 3 buckets are, first, I have questions about the current legislation and recent trends that were in this memo. The second is about the proposed changes and the impetus for those changes. I think you touched briefly on that,
Sure.
but I would like some specific examples as well. And then third is more practically about timing and when we'd have to decide on this, given that not all commissioners are here today, and maybe
Sure.
this could benefit from further discussion.
Yeah.
So in the first bucket, the current legislation requires a party seeking a waiver to identify or to provide the identity of the interested party to whom the solicitation would be requested once the identity is known. I noticed, well, first, how soon after the identity is known does it have to be posted?
That is a question I would ask the city attorney.
Okay.
How soon after it has to be posted?
Yeah, I think we could consult with you on that.
Yeah.
The legislation does not specify a
Yeah.
requirement.
Yeah, and I ask because I'm wondering if people, there's a loophole in which people are like, oh, I actually don't know, and they don't know for a long time, and they never report it. And I noticed that in the summary of the 18 waiver resolutions that were approved by the Board of Supervisors since 2022, there were varying levels of detail that often did not list specific entities or individuals as interested parties. So I'm wondering if that indicates a low rate of compliance, or if there's another explanation for that. And that could be a question for Mr. Canning. Sorry that you're up there,
No,
but
that's
questions
fine.
for both of you.
Sorry. Just to the chair, I'd like to clarify, the waiver provision doesn't inherently require that the interested parties be identified. When the waiver is being approved, a proposed resolution that seeks a waiver shall summarize the purpose and shall identify the type of interested parties or specific interested parties when the identity is known. I think we've generally read that to mean that if the identity is known at the time the waiver resolution is being considered, you would include it. But I don't believe there's any retroactive ability, requirement to go back and say, a waiver was approved, now we know who we're going to solicit, go back and amend the resolution. I don't believe that's been the current practice or is the requirement in the code. So,
Okay, that's helpful. And as far as the varying levels of specificity, do we have any concerns about that. I'm interested in why that is and whether we want to correct for that, or if that just is case dependent.
I would maybe curious if Melanie has any thoughts on that. I think the way the waiver language is written, we would kind of expect to see some variety. If it's a very narrow waiver request, there might be, it might be very clear who would be solicited, and in other cases might be more vague as to a certain type of industry or a certain type of interested party, and that might be more, kind of inherently more vague.
I will also add that as it goes through the legislative process, depending on what the waiver is for, supervisors will call on whoever is listed in the resolution to come report as it is approved on what they are soliciting the donation for, who it's going to be for, what the intention is. For example, there's a behested payment waiver going through the process right now for the mayor's office. That's going through GAO, and all the interested parties are going to be asked to report what they've used it on in the past and what they expect to use it on in the future. So although the resolution itself doesn't specify, there are cases, and this happens quite often, where through the legislative process, that's discussed in an open public forum, public comment can be taken, and then that is also listed in the meeting minutes as well.
Okay. Yeah. That's helpful to know. I mean, as you might imagine, I think inconsistency in reporting is part of the concern here. And so if, like you're saying, throughout the legislative process, like there have to be checkpoints where people disclose this very important information and the public is then privy to that, that's comforting, but something I'd like to think about a little bit more.
Sure.
Okay. And then the other question I had about the trends, since 2022 was about, what we know about the purpose of the solicitations. I know the data showed us like who was requesting them, but I don't know if, I didn't see anything about what the solicitations were about. And also, I'm wondering why the mayor's office, if we know, had the highest rate.
Sorry, say that?
Why the mayor's office had the highest rate of waiver resolutions.
Sure. So unfortunately, because of our city's quite complicated procurement and contracting process, the mayor's office, in order to get a lot of their legislative priorities done, needed to circumvent some of those complicated processes. The behested waiver process allowed them to do that. Again, it's through a very public process, but for the fentanyl emergency ordinance, for example, they needed a behested waiver for that. Again, that was to kind of get ourselves out of our own way in order to solicit what they actually needed to be able to address the emergency crisis. We had to call for an emergency in order to kind of get what we needed. So our contracting process is part of the problem here. The mayor's office, again, they're a new administration, so they're coming in with different priorities, and I think that's why we're seeing behested payment waivers out of their office a little bit more. What we've seen, I think there's like 22 waivers, that might be the number, I could be wrong. I've seen this year alone for legal services for immigrants, kind of protecting our from federal cuts. We've seen services for LGBTQ students and people in SFUSD. We've seen solicitations for fire trucks, for new fire trucks for the city. I believe there was something for expanding shelter beds under Mayor Breed 2 years ago. So there's a couple of things that are all more aligned with legislative priorities of the people who are bringing them forward. And again, you have to find that they're within the public interest as it goes through that public process. But they all, what the subject is vastly depends on kind of the priority of the person or the federal or funding situation that necessitates it.
Great.
And I'm also happy to, if it's helpful, there's a couple of examples of things that President Mandelman has come across that he's not been able to do, and this has kind of been a reason why. So, for example, one thing that we are talking about right now is there's big attacks on media and our journalism. And so there's Common Cause California has worked with our office to make something called the Democracy Fund, which would basically be a fund that we can put money into to fund local journalism in San Francisco. Unfortunately, we don't have a funding source. And an idea from our office was, oh, we could solicit donations to fund this, and then we could use it to fund public media. President Mandelman is not able to do that under behested payment rules. So we can't, and it is not our practice to create funds that don't exist. So this is something that kind of catalyzed this for him. Also, this budget cycle, there's an organization called QuackMap, Queer Women of Color Arts Media Project. Huge, important organization to the supervisor, lost a lot of funding. He would love to go and solicit some donations to this group and is just unable to do that. Harvey Milk Plaza in the Castro, that is a gorgeous part of our city that needs a little bit of love, something that he would love to go and solicit some donations to help us get some funding for. But again, explicitly unable to do that because of the behested payment rule. So there's been a couple of projects that have come about that would be great for him as a supervisor who knows what his community needs, to try to help them get funds for. Again, it would need to be proven to be in the public interest and go through the public process, but we're just not able to do that under behested rules. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Director Ford.
Through the chair and for the record, Executive Director Patrick Ford. Just a question for Melanie.
Yeah.
So each of the instances you just mentioned, it sounds like those organizations are themselves probably interested parties, right? Because they're doing business with the city.
Sure.
And just to clarify, is President Mandelman's hope to ask other interested parties for donations to help fund those organizations?
No. These are, again, we are not, sorry, I am not, these are things that have just come up over the last few months. I don't think that's the intention here. The intention is, we are looking for ways to help these organizations in ways that we're unable to do that now. Okay. So that is not the desire there.
I in no means mean to undermine this legislation because we support it, but I do just want to say that he is free to fundraise for all those organizations right now under current law. Being interested parties does not prevent him from fundraising money to them.
Sure.
It only prevents him from asking those organizations themselves to give money to other people. So I hope that's good news.
For projects, yes. So for the Harvey Milk Plaza, for example, there is organizations in the LGBTQ world that do business with the city that we would love them to help contribute to. And I'm sorry, I should have made that more clear.
Yeah, and that's what this legislation
That's what we're hoping to do here. Yep. We have these organizations coming to us saying, we would love to do this, and we can't connect those 2 points. We have Golden City FC as an organization we've been working with that has a soccer team in near Cole Valley, and the neighbors really would love some help investing in some of their projects, and I'm unable to connect the two and kind of help give them some more resources. So yes, sorry, I should have been more clear on that.
And through the chair, I think those narrow circumstances is why we think it's a good idea, if it's done in a public and transparent way, for the board to consider whether it's appropriate to waive the rules just in those narrow instances.
Okay, that was very helpful. I have a quick follow-up. But these are all examples. These are great examples. I am wondering about the timing of this request. In 2022, the Board of Supervisors seemed fine with this. I remember Supervisor Peskin coming here and being, on board with this prohibition on the board. And so I'm wondering what exactly has changed and why now.
So we have communicated this. We actually, back in March when we first started thinking as we were going through the budget stuff, we talked to Supervisor Peskin. He did not have, again, I'm not going to speak for him, he's not here, but he did not have issues with this, and we did not want to go forward without his blessing because, again, this was a big thing for him. He did not feel like this was undermining the legislation that he had created. This is also a very different Board of Supervisors than the board in 2022. And I think that's why we are considering it now. And again, I don't want to speak for that board, but I think there is a change and a shift in like how we are funding things a little bit in the city. And I believe that that kind of necessitates why we're changing it now.
Okay.
And to your last point, if it needs, I know there's only 3 out of the 5 of you here. There is not a huge timing constraint. If this needs to be continued to a further meeting, that's understood.
I will stop hogging the time now. My fellow commissioners have any questions?
I have a couple questions. Just to follow up on something we touched upon, you alluded to the fact that supervisors were obviously excluded from the legislation when it first was enacted, and I mean that seems to me like a pretty glaring exclusion, and I'm wondering if anyone knows, has any insight into why that was.
What I was told by former President Peskin is that in his mind, it was, well, if they're granting the waivers, they shouldn't be able to bring them forward. And that was just the thinking. But if you really go into that, it still needs to go through the committee process. There's 10 other supervisors, needs to go through the board. It's a public process. So we don't totally understand that thinking anymore, but maybe if you all remember something from that time.
Commissioner, from my recollection, that was language added by then Supervisor Peskin. I don't believe it was necessarily a matter of debate at the commission at the time. It was the follow-on legislation after Prop E where the waiver provision was created, and I think when that was created, it was coming out of negotiations with the board and then Mayor Breed's office, and I think that's kind of where they landed. But that was in the legislation when it was referred to the Ethics Commission, kind of before as Ethics Commission action.
So you're not aware that this was a point of contention, whether the board should be included or not?
Perhaps between discussions with the mayor's office and the board, that might have come up in their debates. By the time the legislation got to the commission, it was already in there, and I think it wasn't something that was like added by the commission. That part, remember? Yeah.
I'm curious, who gets to decide who is an interested party? Who makes that designation?
That's specified in the code. The definition is there, and Ethics Commission staff would help make that determination if there was an advice question. If somebody had questions about whether or not they could make a solicitation, they could come to the Ethics Commission for advice and a determination on whether or not that person met the definition.
I guess my concern is, say, take the mayor's office, for example. If they say, we take the position that none of these people are interested parties, and so we will freely seek behests from them. What check is there on that?
I would say probably the same mechanism as any other commission enforcement-related item. If for any of the commission's rules in the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code, if someone read the code and made it a wrong interpretation or misapplied a definition, they could still be subject to penalties and enforcement action from the commission, unless they sought advice and got kind of clear advice from the commission on that. Yeah.
And in your hypo, it would be an elected official soliciting that payment, and under state law, elected officials have to report behested payments of $5,000 or more. So we do have that line of sight into those kinds of behested payments, so that's something we could look at if we wanted to proactively see if elected officials were soliciting behested payments from interested parties and had not asked us for advice and gotten clearance on the front end.
Is there, what would the, so let's just say some elected official decided to seek a behested payment, just in the non-technical sense, because they took the position that this person was not an interested party, but the commission thought that it was an interested party, and thus there could be an enforcement action. What would be the penalties?
Sure. I mean, penalty factors are set forth in our enforcement regs, and they look at things like the size of the payment. That's a big factor. Any history of noncompliance, whether or not the person has sought advice, what were their attempts to comply, to learn and comply with the rules, what was the degree of public harm, factors like that would go into it. So as you know, the maximum penalty in the code is $5,000 or up to 3 times the amount in question. So it could be as high as 3 times the amount of the behested payment, but that would be reserved for only the most extreme instances where there was willful misconduct and it was very grave what had happened. In most instances, it ends up being either the amount in question or some fraction of that.
Is rescission an available tool, or like a cease and desist?
You mean to like undo the payment? Definitely in the campaign finance context, yes. So we will often seek penalties that are equal to an ill-begotten contribution. So essentially the committee's disgorging what they received. I think in the behested payment context, that would be pretty difficult because the official in question was never in possession of the funds. The funds were given by the person who was asked and given to the recipient organization. So I don't know if we could or how we would do that, to go to the charitable organization that had received the funds and get them to disgorge that money. I think it would probably be more appropriate to just penalize the official in question in some way to factor in what the payment was. Maybe not to penalize them for the full amount, make them pay for it, but to at least peg it to that. If it was, I don't know, $10,000 payment, maybe to peg it to like 10%. I don't know, something like that.
2 related questions. I don't know if this this topic is typically a something that would come before an interested persons meeting, but would it fall under that? And is there any reason why it was, or has it been the subject of an interested persons meeting where others can weigh in on this issue?
This specific ordinance hasn't been. Generally, Commission staff call interested person meetings when it's a project the Ethics Commission is driving or initiating and working with stakeholders to develop those recommendations. In this case, it was legislation initiated by the board, so kind of it's referred to the Commission to act and respond to. So in general, we would kind of look to the board to see what level of stakeholder engagement or feedback there might have been early in the process.
And maybe this question goes to you. Are we aware of any significant opposition to this legislation?
No, we floated this to all of the supervisors and didn't feel comfortable introducing it until we felt like we had the votes. And when we felt we did, there are supervisors who are always going to be haunches raised when any ethics things comes before them, but we feel the opposition doesn't exist and feel comfortable introducing it.
Well, I mean in the public.
Oh, public,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any public comment from anybody who's here today? Clerk, can you please check the queue?
Chair Flores-Fang, we're checking the queue. Looks like we have one caller. We'll wait for them to connect.
Good morning. One caller today. Wow, big caller. Hey, great questions, though. I really appreciate that. So there's something that I need to obviously recommend, suggest. 3 words, Canning and all the other presenters. Know your audience. Know who you're speaking to. Know who you're directing your messaging to. Create the messages for that audience. In this case, multiple choice question here. Is your audience the clerk? Is it the commission? Or is it the community? You know, the community that pays your salary? So we really need to tailor the messages to the community. I think somebody jumped in and said, oh, by the way, you know, is this messaging towards the community or not? So that's really good. That's really good. So tailor your messages to the community. Cannon, you look a little nervous up there, so relax, take a deep breath, practice, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat. Also, clerk, on the minutes, you guys are flying through the agenda. So my name is San Francisco. You have me as unidentified caller, so you need to change some minutes over. I'm San Francisco. If you need to know how to spell that, I could spell it for you, but I think somebody else could help you out in chambers. You're doing a great job. I'm really impressed. You've changed. You've really changed. You're doing a great job asking good questions. Relax. I'm here for you. We're here for you. And, keep it up. I'll be back in. Hopefully somebody else will be calling in from the community as well, or maybe somebody else within the 800,000 people in the community will make public comment. All right, see ya.
Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores-Fang, we're checking the queue to see if there's any additional callers.
Thank you.
And there are no callers, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do I hear a motion on this matter? I have my own, I previewed my thoughts earlier about how I think this specific item might benefit from the discussion of, or discussion with the two commissioners who are not here today. And so I would move and I would make a motion to continue this item to the next agenda. And so that's my motion. And I guess we should vote on that before someone makes another motion. Is that how it works?
If you'd like to make that motion, it'll be the second before you vote on it. You
Yeah.
can also continue the item without a motion. Someone else could move then to decide something today. So I think if you'd like to proceed with the motion to continue, that would be fine.
Yeah, that would be my motion.
I'll second.
Great. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On the motion to table item 6 to the next commission meeting, Commissioner Ye?
I,
Oh, sorry. Yes, on the motion to continue item 6 to the next commission meeting, Commissioner Ye,
Aye.
Commissioner Francois,
Aye.
and Chair Flores-Fang.
Aye.
With three yeas in the affirmative, the motion passes.
Great. Item 6 is now closed. I now call agenda item 7, discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. Does any commissioner wish to speak to this item? Anyone in the room today who would like to speak on this item? Okay, clerk, can you please check the queue?
Checking the queue to see if there are any callers. And Chair Flores-Fang, there are no callers.
Thank you. Hearing no callers, public comment on agenda item 7 is now closed. I now call agenda item 8, additional opportunity for general public comment. Is there anyone in the room today who would like to offer general public comment? Any commissioners? Okay. Anyone in the queue?
Chair Flores-Fang, we're checking the queue one more time.
Okay. And I know it usually takes a while, so I'm happy to wait a second.
And there are no callers.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no further callers, the additional opportunity for public comment under item 8 is now closed. I now call agenda item 9, adjournment. Thank you. This concludes the October 10th, 2025 meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission.